So, for anybody who's been watching my theater school day video short thingies, whatever, you probably noticed I haven't uploaded any of those for a while, or anything else for that matter, and that's been because I've been insanely busy. This past week, I have been at school from 8:30 in the morning till, I want to say, 11 p.m. every single night, and it is hard to find motivation or time to upload anything during that period because it feels like I'm at school all day, every day. So that's why I'm just gonna compile every single day this week into one mega video and then do my weekly reflection as a bit of just an addendum, I guess. So, with that being said, here's Theater School's day, I think 52 to 55 at this point. Honestly, couldn't tell you. It's been a while. So going into Monday's classes, we had our usual collection. Oh, wait, actually, we didn't even. Did we have Monday this week? Yeah, we did. Sorry, we've also got a lot of days off recently, so that's been kind of confusing. Yeah, but for Monday this week, we had our normal collection of classes, those being our voice class, our movement class, and our acting class. Movement class on Monday is normally something called DMP, but it's very different in this case because the room was super messy that we normally do our stuff in because they'd installed some soundproofing in the room, but nobody had been in there to clean it up since, so the entire floor was just caked in dust and dirt, and, like, I actively swept the floor. I actually got out a broom and swept the floor before class started, and it was still messy. So, there wasn't really much we could do about that, and instead we decided to do yoga on Monday instead of Tuesday. Then after that we had our voice class, and I'm not really sure what we did that in that particular class because I normally try and record these the day after so that it's fresh in my mind, but especially with voice class, that's a little bit trickier to do. I think we started working on some new text, and then to round out the day, we had our theater skills course, which is designed to help us learn about like more of the backstage side of things. But in this case in particular, we were focusing on presenting some of our projects. So the school requires us to make these projects a couple per year where you read a play and then have to make something associated with it. So in this case, I made a maquette, which is like, if you've ever seen a set for a show, a maquette is basically what that starts as, or like a miniature version of it that is the blueprint, not counting the actual blueprints that you get for the show. But yeah, it's a visual representation of what the set should look like on a smaller scale before it gets blown up. So I made one of those for my project, and it could have been a lot better, I'll admit. But anyway, what we did on Monday was present them, so I had to go into time. My teacher also got a little bit, I think, jokingly mad with me. Like, they weren't actually upset, but I was keeping time, and we had 5 minutes per person. So I had to try and make sure we were keeping to that schedule. But I mean, everybody, that time commitments there are a lie because nothing ever goes according to the time that has been set. We also had our acting class, and for the last week we've been working on our finals. So this has kind of been a carryover for every single day, where basically for acting class we get a couple minutes to work on our final scenes from the show that we're doing, and you get like anywhere from 7 to 15 minutes, I think was the range throughout the entire week, to work on whatever sounds the most appealing to you. So for some people that means, they're just really focusing on the beginning and trying to get that down. For some it's like focusing on the text or the tactics or your objectives throughout the scene or building a relationship with your partner. And it was pretty much just I don't want to say self-directed because that the teachers were there giving us notes the whole time, which is different from direction and a very niche way of like, you're still the one making decisions, but they're the ones who are giving you advice to be like, hey, I like this, maybe try amping it up or taking it down a little bit. But the bigger overall point here being, you essentially were just guiding where you would go in the rehearsal. They were just there to make sure that they were giving you some notes and advice. For that reason, I'm also not really going to talk about acting class this week because it was just the same thing every day, just with different teachers. So moving into Tuesday, this is where we had our DMP class for movement, and we also had our physical theater class, which is, at this point, preparing for our mime final, so taking all the mime skills that we've learned and applying them as a final piece with some music, and just seeing where that takes us. I'm looking forward to mine, but I'm also somewhat dreading it, to be honest, and it's next Friday, so I need to get working on that pretty quick. Wednesday's class, we did our jazz class and another voice class. And jazz in particular, we're focusing on finalizing our jazz piece, but also working on an entirely new one. And I always get frustrated when working on a new jazz piece because not because it's not because I hate dancing or anything like that, but just because it feels like it takes me a much longer time to get some of the movements and the steps down. But then when I do, it feels great and I enjoy myself again. And it's a weird disconnect where sometimes I just have a really bad jazz class and it screws me up for the rest of the day. And other times I have a really good jazz class and then it still screws me up for the rest of the day because jazz into voice class is like getting mentally exhausted right after getting completely physically exhausted. And then, yeah, Thursday, which was actually the last day this week because it being Easter, our school was closed on Friday and will be closed on Monday. And that means oh geez, what am I trying to say here? We had our normal collection of classes as per usual, but yeah, we had our Thursday class, which was voice class, acting again, which was our joint class, which basically just meant that we were getting a bit longer to work on our scenes, and both of our teachers were chiming in instead of just one or the other. And we also had movement class, which was in this case working with a lot of like weight work and contact work, and also a lot of balloon work. I promise you, it's a lot more enjoyable than it sounds. I don't know, that I found it enjoyable anyways. But yeah, I mean, just like working on keeping balloons up in the air or building relationships with each other. The bigger thing that I think to take from it was mostly spatial relations and knowing where everybody is in movement, and you know, not being able to use your hands, you had to be able to utilize your body in much more creative ways. So I would do things like headbutt or knee or kick or whatever. Or like trying to keep the balloon between the two of you and keep it up in the air, so like, you know, switching the balloon between your different arms or body parts to make sure that it was never unoccupied or unattended, but it was still, you know, being held. And that's pretty much what we did with all of our classes this week. So moving into the weekly review, I guess. This week was weird. I've used that descriptor for it before, but I think that everybody is really comfortable with each other now, which is cool, but I also think that there's a little bit of an underlying pressure with everybody right now. It might just be me who's seeing it. I honestly couldn't say for sure if it is or whatever, but I think everyone is just more than a little bit on edge. And I also think it's just because we're so close to the end of the term and we're getting close to finals and we have a lot of very stressful things to deal with right now that everyone is just a little bit off, I guess. But I notice especially in myself that I've just been feeling a little bit distant from people, and it's no fault of theirs. It's just it's entirely a me thing, but I sometimes get into this weird pattern of behaviors where it feels like I'm just isolated from everybody around me and that I can't connect with them no matter how much I try to, or that it feels like I'm just on the outside of a group. And it's a hard thing to grapple with because it feels very uncomfortable and it's isolating. It's incredibly paralyzing. Now, it hasn't been persistent every single day, but when it does come up, it's just not fun to deal with. And there's really nothing more I can say about it than that because it's hard to explain. Like, everybody has moments where they feel lonely or feels like they're not part of something, but if you've experienced this, the feeling of even though nobody's really being mean to you, or the feeling of everything around you is totally normal and you're just the one person who feels lonely, or it feels like even though you have a bunch of friends around you, you just don't have any, that's what it's like. And it's a weird feeling for sure, but also one that I don't particularly like having because I don't really know where it comes from or why I feel that way, but it just happens sometimes and I have to live with that every now and again. And it's hard. It's hard, man. I don't know. I guess other big takeaways from the week. We're really just getting into the final process of everything, and it's equal parts terrifying as it is exciting. Like right now, as I'm recording this, I can feel myself having this incredibly powerful nervous energy and like butterflies in my stomach, and I guarantee you that'll be a million times worse on this Friday or next Monday when I'm presenting any of the finals that I have to worry about this week. So that's just absolute insanity. I guess if there's some positives to note, I have had some like fun times with my friends, just going to get food with them or going whatever. Or I went to go see Dune Part 2 yesterday with my scene partner, which was unrelated to the scene, but it is funny how that worked out. Um, and more than anything, I'm excited to see how much I've grown. I feel like even just in these recordings, I've changed so much about how I present myself over time, and I've become way more expressive and excited and able to show more of my real personality. So I'm excited to see how far I can go here. And yes, the first term is ending. I'm excited to see how far I've come too. Because it's hard to know sometimes without that perspective of going back to look at yourself or looking back to see. That was actually one of the other cool things we did on Tuesday, where we wrote a letter to ourselves at the start of term, and like rereading that letter, I realized, wow, I predicted some of the problems I'd be having later in the term now without even realizing it. Which is always crazy to think about, that past you can actually tell future you what you're feeling, but you know, I think it's a good practice in general just to keep in mind, like, don't be afraid of self-reflection. Don't be afraid of looking back at what you've done previously. So I guess to wrap this all up in a bow and conclude this little week's recording, um, just, yeah, if you're ever feeling stressed or lonely or whatever, just know that you're not alone. No matter what you might think or tell yourself, you have somebody, I'm sure. I'll be honest, that sounds disingenuous coming from me, but I guess what I'm trying to say is really, if you've ever felt like you're alone, even though you've got a ton of people around you, I've been there too, and I know how hard it can be at times to engage with people. Um, just don't be afraid to engage with people because of that, because odds are they are going to care, and they do genuinely care about you. Or like odds are there is somebody at least who cares about you, and they want to help you and see you succeed, or like just make sure you feel welcome. And I guess more than anything, don't close yourself off to that kind of experience. Sometimes it is good to retreat and just be on your own, but other times it's good to get outside your comfort zone and be forced to interact with people. Also, just tackle challenges head on. You know, sometimes you might be stressed, sometimes it might be difficult, but you'll become a lot stronger for it having done it than had you not. So I feel like it's a bit of a weird wrap up for the week, but without any more to say, I guess, see you later.